Thumb Productions present.
Hey John, how are you? First of all, do you have any idea how hard it is to keep track of where you are and how to get in contact with you? I had to call your mum again to hear you're in Asia now. It was good speaking to your mum though. But seriously, get yourself a cell phone and an email address. It's been a long time, and time certainly flies. It seems like only yesterday I taught you how to use a skimboard, eh?
Hi, Jake. It's been a long time indeed. Too long, actually, but I guess it's easy to say that. We could have grabbed a beer together years ago and caught up. It's too bad that writing this is my best alternative for now. But anyway, I've been doing fine, no worries here. Life has been a bit of a roller coaster. You guessed that right. I'm glad we stayed in touch too, even if it was just with the occasional postcard. And yes, I know, my mum has been complaining as well that I still don't have an email address. But I'm not giving in. Just because everybody else thinks it's normal does not mean I have to follow the crowd. And you really should stop listening to my mum. Although, remember my mum taught us the 3 rules of stupidity? Fuck me, mate. Not in a million miles did I see this one coming.
Funny how things work out in life. You find a coin, and the coin flips the mind. But mate, I feel pretty screwed up at the moment. I don't even know where to begin. After we moved to Norway, making new friends wasn't really easy. It's not that I didn't fit in my new class. I think it's more that I didn't care, I guess. I found myself on my own a lot. It actually sort of sucked and felt alright at the same time. How did that work out for you? Who became your mates from class? I remember you talked about Peter a couple of times. He seemed to be alright. My dad became my new best friend. It's just too bad he was still hardly around though.
After you left, you did leave a pretty large gap, man. I know, mate. It really isn't easy making new friends at all. I hung out with Peter a bit, but I actually hardly made any new friends, real friends, until Bert taught me how to windsurf. I know, we always thought he was a bit of a tosser, and I'll never forget he picked on you when we were kids. But he was funny though. Bert was always bragging about being such a good windsurfer, so one day we went windsurfing on the lake. We were having a blast and he actually did a pretty good job on the windsurfing lessons. He seemed a different guy when he was near the lake. Still mental, but in a good way.
Sometimes my dad and I would go on a hike and skiing trip together, just to the place where he was taken to by my grandfather when he was young. I loved it, being out in the wild together with my dad, and being taught all the survival tricks of the mountain, like Grandpa once taught my dad. During one of our weekend trips, we spent the night in a cabin down the mountain. We called it Mount Pudding because we thought it looked like one. My dad promised me that when I'd be old and strong enough, we'd climb it together and ski all the way down and back to the cabin where we'd eat our freshly hunted meal. Or spare cookies, as he always joked.
It didn't take too long for me to be completely hooked to windsurfing. Equipment doesn't come cheap though, so I had to get a job at a construction company to earn some money and buy some second-hand gear. Luckily, Mum and Dad were my very early sponsors to help me out on that as well, so I could get started. Meanwhile, Bert and I became buddies, and we started training together more and more, trying to push each other in getting to the next level. Actually, Bert, he was always ahead of me. The guy was a natural sports talent, so I had to really work at it and try twice as hard just to keep up with him. Actually, quite similar to you. You were always ahead of me in everything as well. The fun wasn't just about the windsurfing itself, but also hanging out at the surf club and chasing girls at night, or on a beach on a warm summer evening after the wind had died, looking back on a great day and wishing for another one to come. As we got better at windsurfing, we became more serious about training and starting to make plans for the future. Our goal was to make it to the World Cup and nothing less. We dreamed about going to the Pacific and Australia, riding the perfect waves. We made a pact to reach our goals, and from that day on, we were on a mission.
And then, out of nowhere, there was Sophie. Her father got a promotion too, and so she had moved as well. She didn't seem to be bothered by that at all. Within a few weeks, she'd become one of the most popular girls in class. She was stunning, man. All the guys in class fancied her, but I was probably the only one who didn't admit it. I was a complete retard, but apparently she must have liked it.
Bert would try a trick and pull it off the very same day. I had to practice more, and after that, practice again to make sure I didn't forget how I managed to do it. But that's alright, as long as it pays off. And it did. I got closer to Bert's level as I spent more time on the water than him. Where at first Bert was always finding excuses to go windsurfing, all of a sudden, he was coming up with vague reasons to do something else. When I confronted him with that, I don't think he really cared.
There was something positive and energetic about her, and she really got my spirits up. After school, Sophie and I spent a lot of time together. We tried to do homework, but it usually worked out differently. We became inseparable, mostly hanging out at our place, since Mum and Dad hardly were at home anyway. I started to appreciate that, as we had the whole house to ourselves. I think Dad did feel a bit guilty for being away so much, as he'd load us with gifts and gadgets we didn't even ask for. Weird stuff, actually. Sophie and I got pretty bored from hanging out at the house soon, so when Dad asked me if I needed anything again, and I said no, Sophie convinced me to ask for a season pass. Waiting for Dad to take me on a next ski trip had proven to be quite useless, so she thought maybe I should start skiing on my own. Sophie said that it was the one thing that she thought that would be really good for me. And so I did, and she was right. Whether or not my dad was there, I just loved being outdoors anyway, hitting the mountain. It's nice when things fall into place.
In the end, we had to race each other in the final heat. As always, He said he was going to be the winner and trying to talk me down, and joking that it was such a shame that despite all my training, I would still have to watch him disappear over the horizon. When we were getting our gear ready for the race, he made a final comment that ticked me off. There's a thin line between getting on my nerves and inspiring me to give it all that I've got, and Bert did a fine job touching just that line. When the race finally started, I had already beat him before the first corner and kept him on my tail for the rest of the race. Bert was furious and said I cheated on the start. I know I didn't. I had a lousy start. I just worked harder. Later, he told me we'd never become a world champion anyway, and that I was still dreaming. If he wasn't going to become a world champion, I sure as hell wasn't either. Right. So Bert was back in tosser mode. And after the race, I got in touch with a scout, asking me whether I already had a sponsor. It was actually one of the reasons I decided to give you a call and ask about the trip. I was so disappointed, and I know that sort of thing wouldn't happen on a trip with you.
You know, I still can't believe you actually drove off with a surfboard instead of going to college. But letting a coin, our coin, make your choices. It's pretty cool and all, but still, I was actually a little ticked off you tried to talk me out of college as well. Part of me wanted to join, of course, but it's a little stupid when you really think about it. You need an education, at least in my world you do. And I think it's wise to try and get it while your brain still absorbs instead of shrinks. On the other hand, from what I heard from your mum, you seem to be doing pretty okay. Or did you tell your mum stories to keep her from being worried? Also, flipping that coin to determine direction doesn't sound all that smart either. Maybe your brain started shrinking already. Did you actually do that? How about a map? Wanted to spend your cash on petrol? How many circles have you driven?
I see your point about education and all, but I just had to go. I had dreams to chase.
That whole coin idea probably saved me from joining you on the trip, because that made me realise you probably lost it. Ha! On the other hand, I wish I had the guts to just simply do things like that.
I admit, it's the smarter route to follow, and I know you've always been the smarter guy. But I was in serious need of something new. I was born to ride the wind, not to remember facts. It's just not me. And I got a bit bored of our place once I grew up. Probably since it's the only place I'd ever lived. I mean, at least you already got to explore 2 places by moving somewhere else. But I was still stuck. Besides, it wasn't my decision anyway. The coin did all the work for me. It's amazing how quickly I ran out of cash. But I quickly learned that living on pasta and bread keeps the body fueled, and it did wonders for my wallet at the same time. I let girls pay for my drinks, and in return, I would show them my tent. I got a job as a bartender, and later on in a surf shop. I never told you this, but this coin flip thing got at me pretty badly. I flipped a coin on whether to eat or sleep, to go out or not, to walk up to a girl or stay put, almost to the point where it gets sick. Once, whether to take a dump or not, but that worked out differently than the coin advised anyway. Whenever I could, I spent time on the water. Windy days were mine. Even when days passed without wind, I'd still often be on the water just to stay in shape. This is the one thing I never flipped a coin over. This was a given. Wind, ride. I only sent you postcards from a few places, but I travelled pretty quickly in between them. Mostly stayed put somewhere for 3 days maximum, unless I found spots that were really worthwhile. And there was one place that really was worthwhile.
One day I took the lift up the slope, together with Jonas. He's a local ski crosser on the national team. Jonas said he had seen me ski before in the park and wondered whether I skied in any competition. When I told him I didn't, he said I should take some training. I didn't really feel like it. I'd rather just ski around. He said that was a waste and convinced me to some casual ski cross training with him to understand some of the basics. And so I did. I had to follow right on his tail down the hill for starters. Really basic stuff, but it was still surprisingly fun. Jonas was always on the mountain. I was always on the mountain. So every now and then, Jonas and I would train together. Eventually, the allure of competition became too strong. I signed up for a cup and won.
Yet sometimes when training all by myself, I found it hard to keep challenging myself to get to the next level. It is, of course, easy to keep doing things that you've already mastered, and that doesn't get you to the top. It's a trap I fell into more often than I wanted when I think back on it. I could have made more progress than I did. If there is one experience I have to tell you about, it's got to be this one. When checking the forecast, I had seen spectacular circumstances to arrive on what I now call Magic Tuesday. The day started early for me, as I was afraid to miss the perfect conditions I had read about. Several forecasts had shown 4-metre high waves and 20 knots of wind in the morning. As I got up and checked the beach, it wasn't nearly what I had expected. The guy from the surf shop said the forecast had changed and the best moment would be in the early evening. Again, I had my hopes up, but it seemed to take forever for the conditions to become better. During the whole day, there wasn't nearly enough wind to get out there, even though the waves seemed to be getting higher as predicted. I got on my surfboard and tried to catch some waves, but that was hardly any success. I got frustrated as wind stayed out. Nearly enough wind is still not enough, as you know. I had some food to get my spirit up again, and then, within about half an hour of time, it happened. The wind picked up just a bit more, and the waves had become huge. These were the most insane conditions I had yet to come across. I have no idea where all of this came from in such a short time, but I do know I was the only windsurfer out there. I realised it was now or never to get to the next level, but I just wasn't sure whether to hit the water or not. So I had the coin decide for me. Once on my board, I saw how big the waves actually were, and I could feel the insane force of them as I struggled to get out. But I made it, bro. I got out there. It was stunning.
After only a year of full-on skiing, I'd hit about the same level as a few guys that were years older than me. I'd won this championship, and all of a sudden, complete madness started. Local press wrote about me. Coaches and trainers had commented about my so-called fearless performance in the newspaper, and the guy from my sports shop wanted to be my sponsor. It was plain silly, man. I'd hardly done anything, and all of a sudden, I was the new big promise. On one hand, it's nice to get some appreciation. On the other, I still don't get what they were all rambling about. A new promise should be someone that wants to be a new promise. I guess I still just wanted to ski. It did, however, make Sophie super proud of me. And that, my friend, was the best feeling in the world. Mount Pudding never lost its allure. Maybe also because it became more legendary over time. 4 people lost their lives on it in the past decade. It's been snowing like crazy for weeks, and if there's one peak ready for avalanches, it's probably Mount Pudding. A strange feeling ran over me as I climbed the side to ski down it, and standing up there, my heart was pounding like an idiot. I chickened out and walked all the way back to safer ground. A strange combination of fear and gut feeling, but when looking back on it, I should have been able to ski down it for sure. It was a risk I just didn't dare to take. Sometimes I wish I could live a little more on the edge, like you.
I tried reading the waves and chose my path on it carefully. I thought about hitting the lip of the wave at full force and to shred it apart. But I chickened out at the last moment. So I do understand what you told me about chickening out at the very last moment. I do. February the 17th. Not a good date to remember. When trying a new move, I hesitated for a split second. Before I knew what happened, my knee had twisted and I instantly knew it was bad news. I had to fly back home and leave the car and all my gear behind. Once back, hell started. So I was out of the house as soon as I could. I'd go to the lake quite a lot, pretty calming and depressing all in one. I had to get surgery on my meniscus, but the waiting list could wrap itself round the earth. Twice. It took forever. Fuck! Thinking about this surgery and the consequences, knowing that there was only half a chance to ever windsurf again at full strength, the word frustration had given itself a new meaning. On probably the hottest day in the past 10 years, I was out again to the lake. A girl had asked me what happened. I had seen her a couple of times, but we never said hi before. She was just standing there. Man, you should have seen her. Soothingly calm. Nice dark hair. Great tits. There was something different to her from the girls I had met during my trip. She felt like home. I didn't have to talk. She didn't have to talk. We both didn't have to listen and could just sit there in the blistering sun together. She asked me why the tires of my wheelchair were flat and why the hell I was wearing jeans on a day like this. I said I would explain to her over ice cream. We spent a lot of time together during her holiday break. She took care of me in a way I can't even begin to describe. She helped me accept that I may have to throw out some of my dreams. Being a pro windsurfer doesn't go too well together with having a broken knee. They say you have to slay a few dragons before you get to the princess. Maybe that is exactly what happened. Evelyn. I had my surgery and my recovery took its course, pretty okay, better than expected. As soon as the doctors gave me a go, slowly I started to train again. It's hard having to listen to the limits that your body all of a sudden has. It wasn't easy for me to start off gradually, but Evelyn slowed me down whenever necessary. It didn't take long for me to start training like a madman though. My knee felt weak, yet good. I have never been a happier man as the moment I realised I could finally simply run again without feeling any pain. From that moment, it was on. I started training on the water as much as I could during the whole season. Eat well, sleep tight, and train. Until I was close to the same level I was on before the injury. Very close.
I made it to the national team and had a pretty good race in Italy in my first race. Ski cross had become my new way of living. I loved pushing my limits. I'd spend my days at the gym. At speeds of 100, 110 kilometers per hour, a crash means quite a hit to the body, so you need to be strong. When I was skiing, I didn't think about crashing. The more jumps, the better. I loved the thrill on the track, but I think maybe I lacked the absolute will to win. I couldn't care how to save half of a second by adjusting my start. I got bored talking about tactics, weeks before the race would even be there. I just wanted to ski. Does that make me weak? Is it bad to care about the fun of a sport only, and not about optimizing doing it? The pressure of competition steered me away from skiing. I lost my focus on the competition, and the more pressure I felt to use my so-called talent, the less I wanted to compete. My sponsor remained supportive, and they promised that if I could make it back onto the water at full course, they would continue to support me. When I told them I was back on track, they offered me a job, whether I was interested in becoming one of their main test riders. That means nothing else than being paid for windsurfing. At least that's what I thought. I instantly said yes. They replied that most of the testing would happen in different locations around the world. So that's when I knew I had to make a choice. Nice one! Make a reasonable choice between following everything I ever dreamt of
surf in the most fantastic places around the world, and the one girl I ever really liked. Sure. I never told Evelyn that I made the choice based on the coin, of course. She knew nothing about my addiction to the coin anyway, probably for the better as well. She wasn't happy about my choice, but said she had seen it coming. And she encouraged me to chase my dreams. She said it with a face like she just ate a sour pickle, but I think she meant it. We agreed to stay in touch, for what it's worth. When I stepped out of the water to change fins, I looked at the other guys going and hitting this perfect lip. And then I realized I made it to the point where Bert said I would never ever get. Even though it wasn't a World Cup competition, I was living a dream.
All went well and things were going smooth. I felt pretty alright. What else could I wish for? Skiing, having fun, good grades in college, and the girl I want by my side. And then, of course, things went different than the way I planned. Out of the blue, she told me she wanted to have a bit more time to herself. It's not the end of the world, but it felt like the beginning of the end. She probably needed to spend more time studying. With Lars, wanker. You probably know what girls can be like. The way she said it made me feel like I was the bad guy who was standing in her way. I don't think I've ever felt as bad as I did the moment it hit me. I like things the way they are. If the rest of my life could be with Sophie, well, where do I sign? I'm not that keen on changes. That much I've learned. Fuck, I must sound old. My results stayed pretty much alright, but I would never beat the top of the list. More than once, I skipped a competition for no good reason. Sophie was my main reason. I'd rather stay home than fly out to the next competition or training camp. Unacceptable to my coach, of course, so I got kicked off the team, and I didn't really care.
Days on the water took their toll on my knee, And when I saw some of the new young guys hit the water, I just knew I would never ever make that level anymore. They were all doing tricks that I should be making. My body has limits now. I have my limits now. It's frustrating, and I can't do anything about it. And that's probably even more frustrating. It made me long for good old Saturday soup and Evelyn.
Studying my arse. I'm not buying it anymore. I want to trust Sophie, but it's just that I don't trust this Lars. I've only seen the fucker once, but it was more than enough to get an impression. You know, my dad said very few people go to this place. He sometimes wondered whether it actually really existed. Seems unreal. It's the complete opposite of the city in every possible aspect. And it's my home. It's like every other place where I felt I didn't belong, this place makes up for. You should definitely join me on a trip up there someday soon. After I taught you how to ski, of course. Which is, as you know, the mother of all sports.
Testing gear really is hard work. It's not playtime. There's tight deadlines that need to be made, and every possible minute needs to be used as efficiently as possible. During one of the testing trips, the guys from R&D wanted to have a talk with me after I'd altered one of their shapes. I thought they were planning on giving me a severe talk about me altering their hard work, and so they did. I had crossed the line, but since I had so many comments, they told me to put my money where my mouth was and start shaping myself. They offered me a job on the R&D team, just when I was thinking about heading back home. And of course, the coin made the decision for me. And so I packed my bags to the R&D headquarters. Teasder taught me all the fine details I needed to know to get better at my job. He came up with the most insane ideas, and also with ways of making them work. My new surroundings grew on me quickly, with the sounds of tropical animals at night and the friendly people during the day. Teased to put me in charge of a new line of boards for which I made the design of the outlines and started shaping. I spent endless nights in the shaping room trying to find the right lines. Instead of searching for the perfect wave, I started looking for the perfect shape. The mission is probably just as endless. Shaping boards isn't just a matter of cutting out foam and hoping for the best. It's a matter of mathematics, knowing what works and what doesn't work, and trying what hasn't been tried before. Finding combinations of factors that complement each other. Only a few millimeters here and a slight curve there can be the difference between a lousy board and an amazing one.
And that more or less brings us here. About an hour ago, Sophie and I had our worst fight ever. Same old argument over and over again. Space, change and whatnot. And in the end, she ran off. Probably to that arsehole Lars. I'm not even sure if she's coming back, or if I want her back for that matter. I love her, but things have changed. And maybe I've changed as well. So pretty wild, eh? I thought I had it all worked out and planned for. And then this shit happens. I've been screwing up school ever since all this happened too. I might as well have joined you on the trip. I wish I was more like you. Then this would never have happened. It would have saved me a lot of arguing, that's for sure. And maybe letting a coin decide what you do isn't such a bad thing after all. It works out for you too, right? Fuck mate, look at me. I start writing some emotional letter to you. But I have to tell you, it feels darn good to finally get things off my chest. Thanks for that, I guess. Even though it's a complete mission to get in touch with you. So seriously, get yourself out of the 80s and get that email address.
Brother, if you're out there and you can miraculously read this or hear my voice, and I know you can, you know you're a real dickhead for leaving me here on my own, right? Just when I was convinced I could create my own luck, I am taught the hard way about life. If I could shout, I would probably be heard on the other side of the world, but I can't. And I also cannot turn back time. Maybe if I'd given up on my addiction to the coin earlier on, I would have made the decision to catch a flight and meet you for that beer, but I didn't. And now it's too late. Fuck me. Seriously, fuck. I've always seen you as my big brother, and now you're asking me for advice. There's so many decisions to make, but only a few matter. I just can't believe it's too late.
Maybe I'll flip a coin myself, because I'm pretty stuck here on what to do now. Chase Sophie, or maybe get some serious adrenaline first and think things through. Sophie's probably right. Maybe I lack self-confidence. Maybe it's about time to push my boundaries and finally ride down the mountain. It still bothers me I chickened out. If I just do it, that should give me some fresh energy again. Anyway, please give me a call when you get this. It's been too long, and it's about time we finally grab that beer. What do you say? I could use some solid advice. Catch you later, bro. Best, Jake.
Something to hold on to. In no one's land, it's hard to spend the time without my friend. An endless love you gave me all alone. Is it time to keep on moving, or is it time to let go? Do I have to keep on moving a direction I don't know? Is it time for me to go? Take me in or let me out. To your heart or to the open world again. Give me directions where to go. My dear, I'm lost and I don't know where to go, where to go now. Do I want to keep on fighting? Or do I dedicate my world to the unknown? I can wait for it to come, for the better times that we will bond, but I'm not sure if I want to. Take me in or let me out, into your heart or to the open world again. Give me directions where to go, my dear, I'm lost and I don't know where to go, where to go now. My world will never be evolving. My world will never be the same. I'll go my way, I'm sure one day we'll find each other in a better way. We'll find each other in a better way.
Let's see where the wind will take me from here on. I hope it's not too far. I know where I want to be. I think I found my home, you know? Jake, mate, wherever you are, we'll meet again and we'll have that beer together. Catch you on the flip side, brother. John.